There are obvious dangers in life, and most of us know to be cautious of addictions or unhealthy relationships or habits that slowly chip away at our well-being. They are easy to recognize because they wear warning labels. The more difficult challenge is recognizing when something is fundamentally good at the beginning, but asking for more than it should later on. Could be a career, a hobby, a ministry, a side project, a form of entertainment that quietly moved from enriching our lives to consuming them. And by the time we notice, it has become the center around which we do everything else, and everything else revolves. I learned that lesson from a video game. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods talking about how to improve your life one small step at a time. Find everything I do at jillfromthenorthwoods.com. The story that I had years ago is I was deeply involved in a game called EverQuest, and I simply wasn't playing it after work to relax. That's how it started out. But I belonged to one of the top guilds on the server. We raced to defeat new encounters before anyone else, and success depended on everyone showing up at this time, staying till this time. Raids couldn't be paused. It's not a game that you pause. It keeps going. And so if you wanted dinner, if you wanted to get some sleep, and probably there were raids where 50 to 60 people committed to being there. And if you did, you stayed. And, I start to think about those adventures. We solved incredibly difficult puzzles in this game together. We celebrated victories. We got together in real life and had conventions, and we formed friendships that still exist to this day. I still hang out with someone in my guild that I played with years ago. We go camping together. And it is an incredible experience. And the game itself wasn't the problem. The problem was what the game quietly required of me. I started out, like I said, I was just sort of bored on a weekend. I went out to a game store, bought 2 boxes of games just to play them out. EverQuest was one, Baldur's Gate was the other. And I played, generally just whenever I could after work when I had a little bit of time. But then towards the end of it, I was keeping 2-liter bottles of Diet Mountain Dew on my desk because I couldn't leave in the middle of the raid to go get a drink. Dinner became whatever I could eat with one hand out of a bag of chips. There was no time to make eggs or grab a yogurt or do any of those things. One weekend, I stayed awake for 40 hours because our guild was competing in this major raid, and we wanted to get it done. And every time you finished one level, you had to go directly to the next level. Looking back, it wasn't one dramatic decision that harmed my health or my time. It was thousands of small decisions that all pointed in the same direction. Less sleep, worse food, barely even moving anymore, sitting day after day, and then eventually became year after year. Now, this is before we go, before all of this, there was a turning point in it, and we're going to come back to it. But the moment that finally changed my perspective on it didn't come from like a doctor, although my health was going down the tubes quickly, a family member or anything like that. It came from a friend. And she didn't tell me I was wasting my time, although I was. She never even really criticized the video game because she knew I was like meeting people and having fun. And, instead, she made this observation that haunted me for decades. She said, "Jill, you used to be interested in so many things." And that sentence just hit me hard because it wasn't about the game itself. It was about curiosity. Before EverQuest, I loved technology, history, nature, science, the Bible, learning things. I was the kind of person you see today who wanted to explore whatever caught my attention. And without realizing it, my world became smaller. Everything I talked about and eventually revolved around this single activity. When I would catch up with my friends, I would tell them, even though they didn't care, "Oh, we were on this raid and we killed this monster," or "We saw this beautiful new area and it was incredibly stunning and we got to play in this mansion," and I would tell them about it. And suddenly I was talking about nothing else. And the thing that when you think about in your own life, what are you thinking about? What is it that you've just named in your own life that maybe has taken that on, that has changed what you talk about, what has changed every conversation. If a friend described you in one sentence right now, would it be that one thing that holds on to it, that holds on to you? Now, I quit the game before the pandemic, but here's what happened when the pandemic started out. So I sat myself down, when this first happened, and it looked like it was going to take a long time before this resolved. And like many people, I wondered how I would fill my long days at home alone. And my first thought was simple enough. I'm going to go get a video game. And I also went and I bought the makings to make my own ice cream. In the meantime, I learned how to make ice cream. And I'm just going to wait for this whole thing to pass. And then suddenly, this uncomfortable memory surfaced. I traveled down this road before. By the point I started, I started eating healthier. I began to lose weight. I was starting to exercise. I was building good habits that supported the kind of life I wanted to have instead of undermining it. And going back now and spending endless hours in front of a screen wasn't just me picking a hobby or some way of wasting time while the pandemic sorted itself out. It was choosing a version of myself that I worked very hard to leave behind. And so my greatest fear, besides getting sick, in the pandemic was waking up years later and discovering I went and fell back into that same hole again. And now I'm that same person I was before that. And so that's where the pivot happened to me. So a friend of mine, Allison at the NosillaCast podcast, suggested something that sort of sounded almost accidental. Well, why don't you start a podcast? It was a simple suggestion, and I had been doing some audio clips for her. I really enjoyed it. I joined Toastmasters because one of their projects was to start your own fake podcast, and I wanted to learn how to do that. And you know what? It was a simple suggestion, but it changed everything about my evenings. Instead of spending my free time consuming content, I started creating it. And one episode became another, and podcasting led me to reading more books, learning more technology, learning things more in depth, studying the scripture more deeply, and learning about nature right outside my front door, things I always wanted to learn about. Now I'm exploring artificial intelligence. I'm getting out and hiking more and paying closer attention to nature when I do. And eventually it led me to speaking at more conferences. Looking back, I don't think podcasting became my new obsession. It wasn't my new EverQuest. Instead, it opened up parts of me that had been crowded out, and my curiosity in life returned. So I want you to notice that the fix wasn't quit the thing. It was more of start a different thing that pulls you back. You don't need to cut things out of your life today. You just need to add things back in and become, more the person that you want to become. I like playing video games today. I play some silly games. There's one that's called, I don't know, it's a truck driver simulation. You wouldn't expect me to enjoy that. But I just love just driving around in the United States and in the world, driving a truck for no apparent reason. I explore distant planets on no man's sky. And I build some elaborate factories in Satisfactory. But the difference is those games are fitting now comfortably within the rest of my life. I play them. I enjoy them. I eat healthy. I exercise. If I want to make breakfast, I pause the game. If the weather's beautiful, I go outside hiking instead. If inspiration strikes for a podcast, I close the game and start writing. The games no longer are competing for the rest of my life. It's just now a simple one part that I enjoy. So that experience changed the question I asked about every hobby, every project, every commitment. I no longer ask myself whether something is good or bad. I ask whether it's going to make my world bigger or smaller. Some pursuits naturally expand our lives. They introduce us to new people, new skills, new ideas. They help us understand something better. They help us get better health. But others begin with sort of a promise of fun, and they slowly start demanding more and more of our attention till everything else disappears. The warning sign is rarely the number of hours we spend. It is more about whether the rest of our lives continue to grow alongside of it. And perhaps the most simple test of all is imagine someone who knows you well finishing this sentence. Oh, all Jill talks about is, what would they say? The answer could be, if it could be only one thing, it may be worth asking whether that one interest has quietly grown beyond its proper place. A rich life has room for many things: meaningful work, friendships, faith, learning, health, rest, creativity, wonder. A hobby should add to the picture and not replace it. Small steps are often described as the path towards building better habits, but I've also learned that they protect us from losing ourselves. The healthiest life is not one without passions. It's the one where no single passion is allowed to crowd out all the others. So take this thing that you named earlier and ask that question right now. Is it making your world bigger or smaller? And you don't have to answer it out loud, but just notice the next time you do it. Just notice, probably which way made you flinch a little bit. And then the next step is if you've been thinking, listening to this and thinking, well, I wonder if I have an EverQuest in my life. Don't start asking how many hours you spend doing it. Start asking a few more revealing questions about it instead. What has quietly disappeared from your life while you were doing this other activity? Maybe you used to read books, love walking in the woods, going outside, cooking, calling friends, woodworking, painting, going to church. When one interest becomes so large and it pushes out several others, make a list of those things that you miss. That list will tell you what part of yourself is waiting to come back. Then pay attention to the hidden habits of your favorite activity encourages. Every hobby, to an extent, shapes more or less your calendar. It shapes whether or not you're moving your body or sitting for hours. I knit, right? And it's a sitting activity that I have to do while sitting down. But it's a limited time thing. Does your EverQuest lead you towards a healthier meal or lead you towards more activity? Or is it leading you towards something else even faster? Does it help you sleep well at night so that you can stay healthy? Does it tempt you to stay up one more hour and then you're feeling awful the next day? The activity itself may not be the problem. It may just be the lifestyle around it. And so then to bring back, one extra old interest that you had, don't grab 5 of them, just pick one. If you used to be a reader, read a chapter of a book. Take a little time. Maybe if you used to go for a walk around your neighborhood block. Visit a park, call a friend, spend 30 minutes learning something new, completely unrelated to your current obsession. You're not trying to erase passion. You're trying to remind yourself that you're a person that has many interests. You're diverse. There's lots of things that you do. And so the 4th step then is to ask someone who knows you well. What do you think of? What do you think I talk about the most these days? And don't defend yourself. Just listen. My friend changed my life with that one sentence. Someone who loves you may be able to see something you can't. In closing, the goal isn't to eliminate the things that you enjoy. I still play video games. I just do it less in a respectable area. I don't lose myself in that video game for weeks on end, years on end. I mean, I played that game for 9 years. Let's just put it out there. But I still lose myself in a good project, in a good book. The goal is to make sure that those other things in your life remain part of your life, instead of it becoming your entire life, the only focus you have. A healthy life has room for many rooms in your life: faith, family, friends, learning, health, work, rest, creativity, adventure. And every now and then, it's worth walking through this house of your life and asking whether one room has quietly expanded and pushed all the other rooms out. Is there one activity that is pushing everything else you do out? Small changes don't just build better habits. Sometimes they help you become yourself again. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Appreciate you being out there. Remember, you can find everything I do at jillfromthenorthwoods.com. If you're interested in going out and maybe seeing a little nature, I do a podcast called Buzz, Blossom, and Squeak, and you can find it on jillfromthenorthwoods.com. I just redid the website, and I hope you get a chance to visit it. Thanks so much and have a great day.